Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. It's another Saturday night. It's another review of a new Doctor Who episode from me to you. It's your lucky day. Hello, welcome back. My name is Paul Mount, and as usual on Saturday nights, at the moment we're taking a look at the most recent Doctor Who episode, which aired on BBC One this evening. It's been available on the iPlayer since 8 a.m. this morning, but as I've said on more than one occasion, I don't do that sort of thing. I am a creature of tradition. I like to watch Doctor Who when it's on the telly box, which is exactly what I did tonight. This is the first of a run of 3 episodes in this current season, which are not directly written by Russell T Davies. I dare say he's had some influence over the scripts. He always does. He always gets involved. But this episode and the next two are effectively not Russell T Davies scripts. I think that's timely because we've had one really good season opener and 2 top-tier Russell T Davies episodes. I think we can say now, having seen this 4th episode, Lucky Day by Pete McTeague, who of course has written for the series before and is a super fan, much in the way that Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall are, that this series is, as they say, cooking on gas. This is everything that we sort of hoped the last series would be. And there were some good episodes in the last series, but the tone was a bit uneven, it was a bit manic, it didn't quite know what it wanted to be. This season, by contrast, is much more sure-footed. Every episode is built upon the one before. And the overarching mystery of why the Doctor and Belinda can't get back to the 24th of May, and the continuing mystery of who the hell is Mrs. Flood, are nicely seeded throughout the episodes. The only problem I think that we have, as we had with the last season, we've only got 8 episodes, and there's a lot being crammed into the episodes in terms of continuing narratives and the new mysteries of each individual episode. Some of my favourite episodes of rebooted Doctor Who have been ones that are Doctor Who stories in disguise. They're not your typical Doctor Who story. Now I'm going to hold up my hand here and say that one of my favourite New Who episodes is from 2006. It's called Love and Monsters. It was by Russell T Davies. It was one of the episodes that was created as a Doctor Light because of the double banking thing, which I've spoken about before, where they were filming 2 different episodes. The main cast weren't always available to work on both, so they would construct a story around other characters. Love and Monsters is much vilified by the Doctor Who fan community. I think it's an episode that a lot of them haven't quite grasped what it's about. And I'm not saying that in terms of I know better than you. It's just that I got more out of that episode than a lot of fans did. A lot of fans couldn't see beyond the Absorbaloff, which was the green-suited monster creature played by Peter Kay. But Love and Monsters was a story about the effect that the Doctor has on people and the consequences of the Doctor's existence on Earth to people that he doesn't know, people he's never met, people whose lives are affected by and sometimes lost because of their connections, however tenuous, to the Doctor. And if you look at Love and Monsters, it's a story of friendship as well. It's about how people come together because of their mutual love of Doctor Who. And I think that episode came from a particular time when Doctor Who fandom wasn't quite as toxic as it is now. And Doctor Who fans had a shared joy in the series, and it was something that brought them together. Now, of course, that still happens. Not all Doctor Who fans are toxic. But as this episode sort of demonstrates later on, that there is a certain toxic element amongst shared communities, fan communities. But Love and Monsters, much misunderstood. People just focus on one thing. And even the Absorbaloff was, I think, a slightly tongue-in-cheek and affectionate parody of people's perceptions of Doctor Who monsters, green lizard costumes. And I think it's an episode that people just took on face value and thought, this is rubbish. But it really is a very well-structured, very clever and very emotional episode. And I love episodes like that because they do something different. Last year, as you will recall, we had the episode 73 Yards written by Russell T Davies. And again, that was a very different story. That was about what happens when the Doctor's not there and things can spiral out of control. Tonight's episode, Lucky Day by Pete McTeague, struck me as a bit of a companion piece to that episode. That was an episode that played to the strengths of the Doctor's new companion, Ruby Sunday, played by Millie Gibson, who apparently left the series at the end of last year, but we were promised that she would return. I think those 2 episodes are really bookends because 73 Yards was about how she copes with her life when the Doctor is gone, but there is something apparently stalking her, and how she eventually uses the thing stalking her to save the world. This episode is about what happens when the Doctor's gone, what happens to the people who are left behind, much in the way that Love and Monsters touched on that subject. But this was more about what happens to a companion of the Doctor who returns to their normal life and has to deal with what they've been through and what they've experienced with the Doctor, and how they then adjust to normal life afterwards. This again is something that the series sort of skirted with when Sarah Jane returned in School Reunion, but it was sort of fairly lightweight, because that was a story about an alien invasion and the Doctor and Sarah were reunited to eventually fight against that invasion. So it wasn't about that, but it was about the Doctor meeting someone from his past and how briefly they have come to terms with it, how the Doctor has come to terms with the fact that he has friends, but he has to leave them behind. This went a lot more deeply into it because it looked at the issues that Ruby has had to deal with since her time with the Doctor. And as such, I think it was a very cleverly structured episode that dealt not just with that, but about issues that are pertinent in the modern world. Online conspiracy theorists, people who come together because of their distrust of authority, their distrust of the people in charge. This online cabal of people who insist on, for example, the things that annoy me, the flat earthers, the people who deny that the moon landings take place, COVID deniers, all these people. And they constantly, they're online, a slowly growing army of voices that are louder and louder and louder that won't be silenced. And now, of course, they have the internet, they have social media, they have their cameras, they can record everything, they can record their every thought, and they can manipulate things to their own advantage. And that's exactly what this episode is all about. It's a very interesting conceit because this character of Conrad, played by Jonah Hauer-King, he's a podcaster, and he's fascinated by the Doctor. As we see in the pre-credit sequence, he met the Doctor in 2007 as a young boy on New Year's Eve. The Doctor and Belinda arrive in New Year's Eve 2007, and meeting the Doctor fires off an interest in him in all things alien to do with the Doctor, because he's had an experience of the Doctor, and yet as an adult in the modern day he doubts all these things. He is a denier of these things, as we discover. He ingratiates himself with Ruby because he, the year before, had an experience where he saw the Doctor and Ruby and took a photograph of Ruby, and eventually she gets in contact with him and she agrees to be a guest on his podcast. And he talks to her about the Doctor and he talks to her about UNIT. And they become apparently an item. They form a relationship. And this seems to be helping Ruby come to terms with being back on Earth and a normal life. We see brief flashes of her family, her foster mother and foster grandmother and her real life mother. They all make brief reappearances in the episode as background colour. And eventually Ruby goes off on a weekend to a typical English country village with Conrad and a group of his friends. When they get there, however, something seems to be going wrong. The electricity is flickering, and all of a sudden they hear shrieking noises from outside. We've been told of a creature called the Shriek, which is this fanged lizard-type creature which the Doctor and Ruby encountered the year before, and which inadvertently Conrad encountered himself. And he was marked by this creature as a future victim. This is a creature that comes from a pocket universe and comes to our Earth every year to claim its prey from the previous year. But in the village, it turns out that the attack of shriek creatures, there appear to be a couple of them, are in fact a fiction created by Conrad and his friends, who are a bunch of conspiracy theorists who want to prove that UNIT, the Unified Intelligence Task Force, and the Doctor's longtime military friends, everything that they do is a lie. There are no such things as aliens. They want to find out what UNIT is really doing, because they just don't believe in aliens. There's even a scene where Conrad says there's no such thing as Cybermen or Sycorax, referencing, of course, lots of previous New Who adventures. And it's a beautifully put together sequence in this village where Conrad explains who he is, that the whole thing is part of this online conspiracy to expose UNIT as a fake. Ruby, of course, is devastated because she's become quite fond of Conrad. Our friends from UNIT are there. Kate Lethbridge-Stewart, Sergeant Ibrahim. There's a very nice shot with the helicopter. Again, Disney money on screen. In what's quite a low-key sort of episode. And, of course, Ruby is devastated that she's been betrayed by her boyfriend. As the episode rolls on, Conrad infiltrates UNIT itself, and he is armed, and he demands that UNIT confesses on camera that they've been lying all along. Aliens aren't real. I won't say any more because you might not have seen the episode yet, but this is a really fine piece of writing and a fine piece of unusual Doctor Who. And as I said, I do like those unusual episodes that tell Doctor Who stories, but from a different perspective. We don't get a lot of the Doctor in this. The Doctor and Belinda make a quick appearance. There's a flashback, which is quite a nice idea, of an earlier adventure that we didn't see with the Doctor and Ruby chasing this shriek creature. And a scene with the Doctor at the end, which is extremely effective. It's sort of several different timelines sort of jogging alongside one another, developing this central story. But I think what the story is really doing is not just looking at how Ruby deals with her trauma of no longer being with the Doctor and coming to terms with the things that she saw and the things that she did and trying to fit back into the normal world again. It is also looking at this idea of online toxicity and this culture of conspiracy theorists who don't believe in things that they're told, and they will not believe because they don't trust authority, they don't trust the government, they don't trust authority figures. They just don't believe things. And I think with something like UNIT, you can possibly see where they're coming from, because what UNIT represents is something totally alien, but they're so arrogant in the way that they behave and the way they present themselves. And this is something that we see again and again with all these groups of people who, and I refer to the flat earthers and the moon landing deniers, they have this smugness about them that they think they know better. And that's really well put together here with Conrad, who is insufferably arrogant at all times. I think the episode really struck home at the very end, where you have this scene where Conrad suddenly finds himself aboard the TARDIS. The Doctor hasn't yet met Belinda, and he materialises the TARDIS around Conrad while he's in prison, and he speaks to him and addresses him, and he talks about the ugliness of people and toxicity and cruelty of people. And to me personally, that spoke directly to a certain core of fandom these days who detest something so violently and so vociferously in an ugly, brutal way. And that's what I got from that brilliantly put together scene with the Doctor. And a couple of people have mentioned that they thought the Doctor saying to Conrad that he would die alone from a heart attack in prison at 49 and no one care. That undermines the basic tenet of the Doctor's never cruel, never cowardly view, which has been presented across the decades in the show. But my view of that is that sometimes the Doctor has to fight fire with fire, and sometimes you've got to be cruel to fight cruelty. And it's quite a blunt sequence, because we're not used to the Doctor saying things like that. The Doctor's always upbeat, the Doctor's always positive, the Doctor always tries to find the good in things and people and situations. But here he just saw this human manifestation of hatred and doubt and cynicism, and he had no time for it. If I have any criticisms, then they're very few really, because it's such a well put together episode. I felt that there were a lot of issues, things addressed. They were all dealt with in very broad strokes, because 45 minutes, that's all you can do. So it did seem to me a little bit hurried in places. I would have liked to have spent a bit more time perhaps looking at the ethical issues and the morality of these people and where this stuff comes from. I think that's one of the issues. This stuff exists, but what's the root of it all? Does this all stem from a series of inflammatory people who wind people up? And I think we could have perhaps dug into that a little bit more, although that's not necessarily the place of Doctor Who to deal with stuff like that. But I felt it was very on point and on message about the world we're living in today, about a world of doubt, about a world of suspicion, about a world of distrust. And a lot of that, of course, comes from the people who are leading us. But that's another rabbit hole that perhaps another Doctor Who episode might go into. All in all, though, I thought this was a really well considered episode, thoughtful, really well written, good dialogue. Another great performance from Millie Gibson as Ruby, again reminding us of why she was so good in the last season and why it was a shame that we lost her. But she's back for this episode, and she will be back later in the season. I thought it was a really impressive piece of Doctor Who storytelling that really reached much more for the adult audience. I mean, the Shriek, I suppose, was there for kids, but this was dealing with issues that really I don't think kids would get a proper handle on, because mercifully kids aren't yet exposed to this sort of stuff. So I think perhaps that might have passed them by a little bit. So it's a very mature, sophisticated story in what has been a very mature, sophisticated run of episodes so far. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was excellent stuff. And like every episode this season, it bears repeat viewing because there's a lot going on here. A lot of nice little references to the past. Some really nice stuff from Kate Lethbridge-Stewart, played as ever brilliantly by Gemma Redgrave, with references to her father, Brigadier Lethbridge-Stewart, of course, proving that the show really will never and should never lose sight of its fantastic heritage of storytelling. So I'll be interested to hear what you thought of this episode. It's very an unusual sort of episode, as I think most of them have been this year, but striking and powerful and quite haunting in a way, dealing with issues that might be uncomfortable to some. So I would love to hear what you thought of it. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of it. If you've enjoyed this review of the episode, please like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a thumbs up and stick around, because there's lots more stuff to come on this channel. Thank you for watching. I will see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.